Hello, and welcome to our red velvet cake class. Now, there's a lot of steps we need to go through, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. So, I'm just going to do it the way I would think it will be best for you. But afterwards, if you have any questions, please let me know via my email or WhatsApp or social medias, wherever you can find me. And we'll bake this cake together. I'm going to show you it's quite easy. I've had so many people tell me I can't bake, and I get that. But then my response would be, how many times have you tried? Sadly, cake baking there's a lot of easy recipes. There's a lot of more advanced recipes when you get to different kind of layers and fillings and stuff like that. But it shouldn't be something so challenging. You need to take it and make it your own. So the reason for this cake is it's the month of love, February, and also whether you are baking this for family and friends or baking this for extra income, especially now, this would be the time to do it. That's why I decided that the red velvet cake is the perfect mix or the perfect recipe for this month. And the bonus, if I think about it, is that you can make this into cupcakes as well. We're going to use the exact same recipe and just divide them into cupcake batters and maybe bake them a little bit slower and a little bit more just to get that cupcake effect done. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. For today, we are going to do just the red velvet cake with a cream cheese frosting. Very easy. I've decided not to use any of my big mixers. I'm going to do it with my handheld because most of the guys at home only has a handheld one, especially if you're not baking for clients or anything like that. You probably just have that two little one that's like this. Let me show you. Let's get the thingies that goes inside here. That has been walking away, it seems. Don't worry, I'll get them when we get started. And we're only going to bake this cake using this. So let's get the ingredients started. For those of you who doesn't know me, my name is Yolandie. I am a part-time cake baking and decorating person. It's not a full-time job. It's definitely just my passion, and it's something I've developed also over the years. Over the last few months, I've been really sharing where I started and where I'm at. So with progress, even though you are a part-time baker like I would be, it may take a little bit longer since time is limited, but it's surely something you can learn, and it takes time. I had also a lady ask me that I don't believe in the online classes. It doesn't teach me anything, and I get the way you feel that way. But for me, an in-person class is great. But here's the thing. You see it for 2 hours and you only see it once. With these, you can watch it over and over and over again and then learn from what you did, what you need to do. That's the easy way. I don't know about you guys, my memory is as short as a goldfish. And by the time I get home, I've forgotten most of what I learned. But with the online, I can go back and see, okay, you just see how to do that again. And there's no shame in that. That's perfectly fine. And that's how we learn. So as a part-time cake baker and also decorator, I've learned loads and loads of tips and tricks over the years, gone through a lot of trials and errors, and I'm finally at a point where I think I can bring a value to people out there, people like you. So let's get started in making this cake. And first step, let's get our tools together. Right, now let's put, almost all of the tools together. Remember, you do not need fancy dancy tools at home to bake a cake. You can use whatever you have. There's small little ones that you might want to invest in with time, like a kitchen scale. This is a big yes for me. This is an amazing tool to help you get those ingredients just right and make sure what the recipe says is what you are using. So you don't go back and say, well, it's a bad recipe. I've come to know that there are a lot of different ways people are measuring and throwing stuff together using cups that are this size and calling it a cup. You know, so having a kitchen scale like this one is crucial for me. If you don't have one, don't worry. The recipe is written in cups as well, and you can try that with your first time if you don't have. So, like I said, there's a few tools that you might need right now. Okay, so of course our oven. I have done baking in a slow cooker. I have done it in a pot with water. I have done it, I think the only way I haven't done it is over a fire, to be honest. I've done it in microwave, I've done it in small ovens, bigger ovens, gas ovens, so many ovens. The trick there is you need to own your own oven in the sense of knowing how to bake it and how to make it. Now, a tip I gave a lady the other day, she said, oh, that's so much ingredients and it's my 4th time, and that's great. Keep going. But to save on your ingredients, you've got to maybe half your recipe. That's totally fine. Things get tricky when you start to double your recipe, but when you half it, that is so much less ingredients, money saved, and you can taste the recipe first. See, okay, it came out too dry, so maybe I need a little bit something like sour cream or egg yolk to make my recipe a little bit more moist. Turn the milk into buttercream, stuff like that. You can tweak your own recipe, but we'll get into that techniques later. It's just a reminder that you can do it in smaller amounts, save on the ingredients, and test the recipe before you go out and make a cake for a big event, which I definitely encourage. Now, there's another thing I want you guys to remember is the different places you are in the country. Say, when I bake my cakes here in my town in Potchefstroom in the northwest, and then I go up to the Eastern Cape and I try to make the same recipe the same way with the same method there, it totally flopped. Why? Because some places are the difference in the air, in the environment you are, if I can explain it like that, is crucial as well to baking. So it's not a total game changer where you have to stop. I won't encourage that. I just need you to pay attention how the first one came out and then tweak it from there. All right, so when you watch more of my videos, when you learn how I bake a little bit more, I try to explain things a little bit in a sense of you can take any person's recipe and then you can read through it and already see, okay, this guy is using milk. But if I do buttermilk, that would add moisture. Okay, this guy is using cake flour. That's great. If I find a cake flour or cake wheat flour that is most all-purpose flour, I want to see what the protein content is in that. You can flip over the 2.5 kilo or whatever that you bought, and you can read on the protein there. It's very interesting when you stand in the grocery shop, see 5 different brands, and start to flip them over, and you can immediately see what the protein is in it. And why protein? Because that's what's going to add the moisture inside your cake. Egg yolks add moisture. Egg whites help your cake rise up. So immediately when you read through a cake recipe, you can see, okay, this lady is using this lady is using this. I've baked it. Don't go and change it immediately. Maybe the recipe is perfect just the way it is. But let's say you're now in the Eastern Cape. I've learned that when I bake it there, I have to watch the moisture because there's a lot of moisture in the air. The moment I took the cake out, it fell apart. So I have to see that I add a little bit less moisture because I don't need that much today. If that makes any sense or it doesn't make any sense, hit me up a little bit later and tell me, okay, that part didn't work for me. Could you explain it a little bit more? That way I know what content to put out there for you to become the best baker that you can be. Okay, so back to our tools. We need, of course, our mixer. Now you can use a stand mixer. You can probably use the whisk as well. It will just take you a little bit longer. The hand mixer that I have here is quite amazing. It's my mom's. It's probably over 10 years old. So they last very long if you take good care of it. And it works perfectly. I'm not going to have you listen to it when we do it because it makes noise, and with the mic and you guys sitting there, it's going to be a tedious sound to listen to. We'll skip over that part. Something else you might want to invest in is have one of these. They are just a timer that helps you time things. What I've noticed in the beginning when I started, I used my phone. And then for some reason, if you switch apps or you press something wrong, it goes off. And then you kind of forget about that cake in the oven because you start doing different things. Having one of these timers just help you so much in making sure when you put on 50 minutes, you get 15 minutes out. It makes a terrible noise. So let's see if I can. So you'll definitely be sure you'll hear that. And for this recipe, we are going to do 25 minutes in the oven. So we're going to put our timer on 25 minutes. And I'm also going to preheat my oven. Now, my red velvet cake, I like to bake very fast and with smaller amounts of time. You can bake it at 160 degrees and maybe add a little bit of time. You just have to see where you're at and what space you are in. Of course, the other tool that you need is your baking tins. Now, again, different baking tin sizes means you need different batter sizes. For my 20 centimeter, I can make 3 perfect layers into this, and I use about 460, 400 grams, depending on what my batter will weigh, into each tin. Yes, I measure them out, again, with a kitchen scale. Of course, when you're a home baker, it's for family and friends. You can eyeball it. It's totally fine. But when I bake for clients, I want them, when they cut that cake, they want to have the perfect layer of cake, perfect layer of frosting. So measuring that is really nice. And don't get too overwhelmed with everything I say right now because I'm already seeing you guys going like this and thinking, how am I going to do this? Don't worry about that. It's something that you kind of do. The more you do it with such ease and ease. Even if you haven't baked for ages, the first time might be a little weird. But if you know where your ingredients are, you're well set up, you continue baking, everything gets easier, just as it would in life. Okay, we need baking paper. So baking paper, guys, are one of those things that I wouldn't skip if I were you. If you have the baking spray, it's great to have that alone, but especially with your carrot cake and then with the red velvet cake, they tend to stick. So if you have a layer of baking paper underneath, why not use it and avoid that struggle of throwing out your cake and half of the cake is still sitting in the tin. Definitely have baking spray. The reason I'm showing you this is you get a lot in stores. So if you're just a baker for family and friends, great, that works perfectly. I think it's Cook and Bake or something like that. They work nicely. They make a cloud full of air that you tend to cough to once you've sprayed. Investing in this, I'll show it to you closer on my socials. It's Bagels Spring Silver. Now, in the past, I think I took that recipe down because they kept flagging me for it. for some reason. There's a method that you can add oil and a little bit of flour and stuff together and make a paste also to use, but that's so messy. If you have this, it doesn't make that cloud of air that makes you cough. It works so perfectly. I don't have any left in this one. When you spray it, I'm just going to show you. It leaves a white layer there, and I have never ever had a problem of a cake sticking ever again. So baking tins, I'll show you a little bit later what we do and how we do it. Baking paper, very important with this cake. You're going to need mixing bowls, okay? So what I encourage you to do is look away from thinking about the dishes. Okay, if you think about the dishes, you've already failed in baking your cake, if I can put it that way. Because every time you're going to measure something out, you're going to think, oh, all of those dishes. I don't want to bake, I just buy. I get that. But making sure you have all the ingredients ready is crucial. Because you don't want to come to a point where you've baked and measured everything and already mixed your sugars and all the ingredients together, and then you ran out of baking powder. So having all of those bowls, I have quite different ones. I have smaller ones, I have plastic ones, bigger ones. Just helps. It just helps. And it doesn't have to be these. You can just use little buckets that you put the kids' sandwiches in for school. That's perfect. Just something you can measure out beforehand and then throw together. We've got 2 mixing bowls here. The reason for that is I want to sift in my dry ingredients, which is another thing. I encourage you to have let me get mine out, is a sift like this that we can sift all of our dry ingredients together. If you don't have one, use this. And I'll show you how to later. Small little mixing, measuring cups, bigger ones, smaller ones, for teaspoon and half a teaspoon. These ones are for cups and molds, and they just help you make life easier, and they're so inexpensive. Maybe a little skewer or something like this to press into your cake once it's baked, just to make sure it is baked through, because again, with the different ovens that is outside there, you might bake at 25 minutes that I'm going to say you have to bake it for, but then your cake isn't really getting a little bit of air, so it's taking 35 minutes. You just have to watch it a little bit. All right. That is most of the baking tools. If we go through the class and there's something I see or something that I haven't mentioned, please forgive me. I have a lot of stuff, and it's so easy for me to just grab what I need and go on. So getting it all together might be a little tedious for me. But if I do forget something and you see something during our class that you don't see here now, don't worry about it. Remember, you're not baking this right now. You can come back, write it out, get it, make sure there's something else you can use instead, and we'll throw this cake easy peasy together. So let me get all of the tools out of the way, and we will get to the very first part. Right, we are at the second step, third step. I don't know the steps, but we are at the next step, and that it means we have progress. We are okay. Okay, so our next step is remember to put on the oven for preheating while we do the prepping. So we know that oven is nice and hot and exactly where we need it to be. We do not want a cold oven, because then our cake won't rise the way it should rise. All right, we have our tins, and now I want to measure out the little baking paper that needs to go in here. So what I'll do is I'll just drop my tin right onto my baking paper. You can do this ahead of time and maybe do quite a few, keep them aside for when you need them. Lately I've seen you can actually buy them also. I've got a little pen here now. You don't need this, but I would encourage it. It is a food coloring marker, which means it's food safe. If you don't have one, make sure when you cut the little rounds out later, you cut within that line. So the ink of your pen is not going to be in the cake. So I'm literally going to pull a circle. Right, I've tilted the camera a bit just to make sure that you guys can actually see what I'm doing. There we have one round, perfect. And cutting another one out. Now using a food safe pen means I don't have to worry that the ink, when I cut, it has to be perfect, because I suck at cutting out things. Okay, one more. Let's just make it there, and then I can get two out and use one for later. So maybe opening this will help, Yolandie. There we go. Okay. I am only going to need 3, but since I'm busy, I can just do one more. Right, I'm going to put this away, get our scissors, don't fall, there we go, and we're going to cut this out. I'm going to put this away, because I'm going to use it later for smaller ones, repurposing always, and we are now just going to cut out all 4 of these. I'm only going to use 3, but I'm going to show you an easier way, because like I said earlier, you're probably thinking, oh, so many steps. But don't worry, it gets easier. We're going to fold this in half, so the lines of the half are aligning. Fold it in half again. Once again, aligning those lines. And now we're only going to cut that small bit. No, doesn't. Like I said, I suck at cutting. Perfect. Perfectly round one. Now, you want to put a little bit of, oh, this is so empty, a little bit on the bottom and just a little bit on the side, just so it doesn't stick. And I'm going to drop that little round in there, smoothing it out, pressing it into the side so our cake will fit onto that perfectly. Now let's quickly do the others. Okay. One more, and then I'm going to come back once I've coated all 3 of my tins. Now that I have my tins coated, and as you can see, they are pressed down, I've sprayed them just slightly on the baking paper as well. We're going to put those aside, and now it's time for our ingredients. Now with this cake class, I'm not going to have them all packed out for you and just throw them together and leave you hanging with how to do it. I'm actually going to bring out the ingredient and we are going to measure it together, because you need to see how I do it as well. Okay, so I have my recipe here aside, so if you see me glancing this way, I need to have that recipe here. I have so many recipes, I can't remember them all. You don't have to remember them all. Keeping a file with all of your recipes together is perfectly okay. It's fine if you're a master baker and you can do them all by head. I'm not that kind of person. So, like I mentioned before, I forget quite easily. So, I have it here and we're going to start getting all of our ingredients together. Now, for the first one, we need dry ingredients. So, I'm going to start with my all-purpose flour, which I have here. All right. We're going to get out our cocoa powder right here. Now, I'm not going to pack it all out, and we're going to measure it and put it aside and then later put it all together, because I want to make sure I have all my ingredients, that I don't come in halfway of baking, putting everything together, and now I have to run to a shop. that will drive anyone crazy. So let's start. Okay, all-purpose flour, my recipe that you guys have as well is 300 grams. Now it is also written in cups, 2¼ cup of all-purpose, but I'm just going to use my trusty scale. Now there's a lot of way to measure cake flour. Perfect way is to take this, okay, if you're doing it with cups and you want to do it right, get a spoon. I don't have a spoon here, so I'm just going to use this, and one by one add them into the little measuring cup until it is full, right? Okay, there we have it. Now you are sure there's no air bubbles inside. Another way you can do this is you want to fluff up that flour, okay, so it's nice and fine. When you scoop it, make sure it is level, like that. You can use a knife to level it off as well, making sure it's level, and that's a cup. Make sure the cup says it's a cup. Don't go using your teacup. It will not be the same. All right, for me, having a kitchen scale is perfect. I'm gonna zero my scale. This is going to be hard showing you. Okay, we're gonna zero this, right? But now I've zeroed it, right? Which is great. Now I want to add my sift. It's not going to be 0 anymore. So you've added weight, you need to start at 0 to make sure you add 300 grams, right? So one cup. We need 2¼ cups, more or less. Definitely exactly. Okay, so now I'm going to use my scale. So I'm at 267. I'm going to add until I have 300 and I'm going to stop. How easy was that? Having a scale is amazing. We're going to put that aside, and we need cocoa powder. Now cocoa powder, again, you need 1/3 cup. Kitchen scale is right here. So again, I'm going to zero that because 1/3 cup is about 25 grams. Sorry, I'm reading ahead. So that's very little. And you might wonder why I have cocoa powder in this recipe. That's just the way red velvet works. It makes it less sweet. It gives that different texture and different taste to it than having an overwhelming chocolate cake. You just get that little bit of flavor. Okay, so I'm going to add, making sure my scale is on 0, 25 grams. Gonna watch this. Perfect. 25 grams, 1/3 cup. That's it. Then, next up, for my dry ingredients, because in the recipe you'll see we need to sift all of our dry ingredients together, and of course I've done it the wrong way now. We are going to sift these together. Because in the beginning I did tell you I was going to do this step by step. That's just the power of doing it so much. Now, okay, in the sift you will see there are little lumps there. Don't go throw those lumps in. They will end up in your cake as lumps as well. You need to either chuck that away or work it through so it is fine. Right, we're going to put our flour and our cake flour there, put it away, and we're going to measure out all of the other ingredients too. Next up, I need a teaspoon of salt. I have my small little ones here. The other day, just as we talked earlier about all of the dishes, I started using old cupcake liners I have. So instead of using this and making myself some dishes, I'm scraping out, making sure that it is level, because that amount in here, that is a teaspoon. You don't want to go and fill it up like that. It's going to be more than a teaspoon. You only need 1 teaspoon. So we're going to add 1 teaspoon there. Put this away. And the next one is going to be our baking powder and our baking soda. We need 1.5 teaspoon of that. Again, make sure you have the right ones. You can do this with a normal teaspoon at home as well, but the risk of it not being exactly is there. But before I had all of these, I just used a regular teaspoon that I remember now I have coffee. A regular teaspoon that is in my cupboard when I make coffee. All right, we're going to add 1 teaspoon. Again, this is the teaspoon. Don't do this. And it's going to be 2 teaspoons or even more. You want to scrape, fluff it up like we did with the flour. Scrape it down. Even if you use something else, like the back of a knife, scrape it off. And you have an exact teaspoon. I almost put it in the salt there. Okay, 1, but we still need a half. So again, scrape it down. And we have 1.5 baking powder. And we need 1.5 baking soda as well. Now, when you look at the baking soda, it's much more grainier than your baking powder. So you want to make sure you don't have any lumps there, because it's going to add to the amount that you take in your teaspoon. Okay, or maybe take away. Again, level it out. This is easy to shake off because it's so grainy. But again, you want 1.5. So don't go do this. It's not going to be 1.5. You just want to make it even. Right, let's put these away. And that away. And next up, we need our wet ingredients. Perfect. Wet ingredients, let's just tidy it up. Otherwise, we're going to have a load of tidying up to do later, which we don't want. Do this while we go along and make sure everything is perfect. Now we need our wet ingredients. We need some eggs, 2 to be exact, 2 large ones. Now, you'll see my eggs are not clean like that. We are blessed enough to have our own chickens, so my eggs are always fresh. But we recently added a new one, and little speckles egg. Whoa! Ew! Welcome to the joys of baking. Let me tidy this up and I'll come back with the explanation. I'm back. After a disastrous attempt to show you how to look at the eggs. Anyway, let's get back to it. I am very blessed to have my own chickens, and they give me fresh eggs all day, every day. And some of them are quite new. Some of them are older hens, so you will get different sizes. Little speckles eggs are quite smaller. I actually don't have a small one here than the other ladies. So when I do my baking, I tend to look to use the larger eggs. Extra large eggs are much more better to add that moisture, like I said earlier, and also make your cake rise up. So we need 2 of them. I'm going to use the biggest ones I can find, preferably not squash them all over my body again. We're going to put that away. Yeah. There we go. And next up, we are going to need buttermilk. Now again, somebody told me, send me a message, said, Yolandie, I'm in Checkers, I'm seeing a Marzi. No, Marzi is not the same as buttermilk. If you don't get actual buttermilk, if the label doesn't say buttermilk, it's not buttermilk. But even though sometimes it's hard to find, you can make this at home. So you need regular full cream milk and we need white wine vinegar, right? You need normal vinegar. Now, what's the difference between this? The white wine is going into our cake as an ingredient. This vinegar is going to be for our buttermilk, because we're going to add 2 tablespoons of vinegar. If you don't have vinegar, you can use lemon juice as well, into our full cream milk. And while we're getting our ingredients together, we're going to put this aside, and I'll show you later what it does. It thickens up and it becomes the buttermilk we need. Okay. Next up, we have our sour cream. This is the regular old sour cream that you find in the shops. You're not going to need a lot of that, but putting this into your cake, it makes the cake soft. It really does. You can use this in all of your cake recipes. Add a little bit of sour cream inside, and it will help with moisture incredibly much. We already said we need the white wine vinegar that we have ready. Oh, the star of the show. You can't have a red velvet cake if you don't have red coloring. Now, please, bear with me, of course. Let me show you. Let me get my other one. There we are. Right, Yolandie, I went to the shops. I found this at Checkers. No, you can throw that away. Because this is liquid, it's going to, I don't want to be, I'm probably going to step on someone's toes right now, and there's going to be people out there that use it. I've used this and it's worked perfectly. I'm so freaking glad for you. I don't use this because this is a liquid. I am out to break things today. This is ridiculous. Because this is a liquid, this is going to alter my recipe. This is going to change the amount of liquid I have in my recipe, and I don't want that. So I'm going to put that away. I've had that for years. It's so old that it will probably not even turn red. And the worst part is it's going to come out pink, not red. Gel coloring. That you want to use, and best of all, red velvet powder. If you have this, everything's going to be red, and that's perfect. Because that, with a little bit of that, you're going to get the perfect red velvet cake. Right, we have that available. And that, my friends, is the ingredients we need. We need flour and cocoa. We need buttermilk. We need salt, baking powder, baking soda. We need more powder that's going to add the color. Our 2 eggs, sour cream, and white wine vinegar. What else? Sugar. You can't have a cake without sugar. Now, a lot of recipes out there will tell you to use white sugar. Love using brown sugar in my red velvet cake. And I love making my own sugar, my own brown sugar, with adding molasses to this. I've made the perfect brown sugar that has the perfect taste that just enhances my red velvet cake so much more. Now, don't fear, you don't have to worry if you don't have this at home. If you are particular and you want to get the right things, go to Woolworths. Woolworths have a very expensive one, but you will find this deep down, bright, dark brown sugar that when you scoop it, you can already see it's different. It's not runny. Now, the regular ones that you find in your shops is runny, it's lighter in molasses. That's perfectly fine. You can use that, but it's very close to sugar. I love using this. Now, there is a way to make brown sugar. You just add the same amount of cups of white sugar that you have with the same amount of tablespoon of molasses. Say I want to make 1 cup of brown sugar, I add 1 tablespoon of molasses, and then I work it through with my hands for a little while, and I end up with, oh, listen, I love the smell of it. Okay, we still need our sugar, so I'm going to get a little bowl there. Put this aside. Okay, and again, come back to my kitchen scale or either use cups, it doesn't matter. We need 1.5 cups, 300 grams. We are at 0. I'm going to put that one in, one at 157. I'm going to add more to 217. Little bit more. Oh, we are at 299. 300 grams. Put that aside. Put this away. And even though that felt so long watching, doing it yourself will not take that long because I'm explaining the method as we go along. Right, we have everything we need. Put them together in this, like this. And now we can finally start baking. Okay, I'm going to get you guys a little bit closer like this. We are going to start off with our wet ingredients. We are going to add 2 eggs. Always break your eggs into a separate tiny bowl so you can make sure the shells doesn't go into your mixture. Like this, fell off next to it, but it could have been in my cake. So I'm going to add 1. I have a little bag here because my chickens love the shells. It gives them... Oh, and there we have it. Now, if you look at that, you can see my shells being in there. I need to take them out immediately. We do not want those shells in our cake. Right, perfect. We have our eggs. Gonna put these back nice and clean. Next up, we're adding our sugar straight to the eggs. And now we need to whip these up together. We are going to use our hand mixer. Let me get myself some space here. And whip these up until they are light and fluffy. Now, depending on the mixer you use, this might take longer or might be faster. So I'm not going to have you listen to this. I'll come back when it is light and fluffy. Just to help you out a bit, I've used my timer and I've exactly mixed these up for 5 minutes. The eggs and sugar together, and I can definitely see my sugar have gone so much more fine is the word. If you press the texture, you will see there's almost no sugar left. You can go 8 minutes, you can go 10 minutes. And the trick with this is when you bake a cake and the cake folds in the middle, in like that. All your cakes go whoop, in the middle, there's a big hole, and then there's baking on the sides. What the hell happened? Your sugar wasn't mixed well. It wasn't turned. The grainier your sugar is, the grainier your cake is going to be. When you make brownies, that is when you don't have to really worry about that sugar being dissolved. With a cake, the longer you go, the finer the texture is going to be. So this has been mixing for 5 minutes. I'm going to put this aside because now I want to show you what happened to our milk. What can I use? Let's use this. Right. Do you see all of those grainy bits, those thick parts in there? That is buttermilk. And that is what we are going to use in our cake. Now, we need to add this to, we already have our sugar and our eggs inside here. So now we need our buttermilk. For the buttermilk, we need 1.5 cups or 375 mils. So I have my little cup here. It says 250 mils, 1 cup. I'm going to add 1 cup of my buttermilk. I wish you could see the lumps in the buttermilk. That is exactly what you want. Also, fill it up perfectly. That's 250 ml. We're going to add that in. And half, I'm not going to throw in half of the cup because I don't know if it's going to be exact half. I'm not that smart. You can, if you are not as particular as I am. I am going to grab half a cup, 125, and now I know I have 375 ml of buttermilk. I was wondering if I'm going to have enough in my cake. Oh, that's going to add so much delicious moisture. Let's put this aside. And I'm going to use my spatula. It's one of the tools I didn't mention now that I think of it. Slowly just work that in. You can use the mixer as well, but I promise you it's going to be all over the place. So just running it through with the spatula is perfect. Okay, what do we need next? We are going to add in our sour cream, which we need a quarter of a cup. I think, yes, I have a quarter here. Now, the other day I found these cool little measuring cups. They are so cool. They have tablespoons, milliliters. They've got, this one has ounces. It's got cups. And I definitely told myself, South, when you go back, you're going to get more of these. We need these on the website. They are so cool. I can just measure out quarter cup there and use it. But you also, when you buy a batch of your measuring cups, you'll always get all of them, and a quarter cup will be there as well. I'm going to scrape out a quarter, but also making sure it's level, like that. And even if it is a little bit more, that's perfectly fine, because that's going to even add more moisture to this cake. Right. That in a bowl for later cleaning. This aside. And we're going to fold that in. Don't worry, it'll all come together later. Okay, let's make sure we have all of our ingredients. I'm going to leave the white wine for last. We're going to add a little bit of gel color or powder. I'm going to use my powder, and I'm going to add, and you'll immediately see how this changes things. A tablespoon in there. Immediately chuck that tablespoon for cleaning, because that's going to turn everything red. Put this aside, and look at this color changing to red immediately. That is exactly what we want. Now we still need to add our dry ingredients in here. I'm just going to press the lumps to the side of my bowl to make sure those lumps are out. You don't want to eat your cake and find lumps of coloring in it. Okay, and we need our dry ingredients. That is what we have right here. We have our flour and our cocoa powder. We need our salt. We need our baking powder. And we need our baking soda. Now, slowly, little by little, I'm going to add that in. I'm just going to use one of my measuring cups again. And then we put it so that you can see. And instead of throwing everything into your bowl and mixing it up, you're going to have a cloud of flour everywhere, more cleaning up to do. I'm going to add in about a third of this. Perfect. And then just get that out of the way, run my spatula through until it has become, it comes together. Now you're still going to have those lumps, but when I start mixing, I'm not going to have everything all over. Now, what the cocoa powder does, apart from taking away a little bit of that sugar, it gives us that dark and velvet color. Okay, gonna add more in and continue mixing it with my spatula. Now, if you don't have a spatula, don't worry. You can use the whisk as well. This probably everyone has, except my sister. When I visited the day, I asked, do you have a pup maker? And she said, what? I said, a porridge maker. How do you make porridge? And she didn't have a whisking. I ended up using one of her mixers whisk. And you can just whisk this together by hand. Now, don't go do this vigorously, all right? You don't want to overmix your batter. The only thing I want to do here is get those lumps out. Very last bit of flour. I'm just going to tip this over. Perfect. Get the bowl out of the way somewhere. There we go. And I'm going to add this in. Slowly, taking my time. Do not try and rush baking. You're just going to feel overwhelmed and stressed. And baking is about putting something together. Eggs. What is that little cat doing? We just wanted to combine. Now at this point, I'm definitely just going to leave this. Put it aside. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to continue just whisking this in by hand. All I want to do now is get those lumps out. Now there's one thing we still need to put in. Now this is going to round off your cake is the white wine vinegar. Why they need it, I can't tell you. I'm not that brave, I'm not that smart, but I'm going to put in 1 teaspoon of white wine vinegar right into my bowl. And you can immediately see what it does with the baking soda. Now the scientific reason behind that, I have no idea, but it works, and that's all we want. So, all right. I am almost happy with that. I just want to go through and see if there's no lumps. I just don't want to overmix this batter. The more you overmix your batter, if I go in with a full speed mixing this, we're going to take out all of that moisture we put in. So we don't want our cake to be dry. We want it to be delicious and soft. Oh my goodness, can you see that? Luxurious is the word that comes to mind. It's going to be perfect. Now that it's come together, I'm going to bring my tins and again, my kitchen scale. Now you don't have to have this, you can eyeball this at home. But I want to measure out my batter. Now I don't know how much this is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out to let's say 300. I can probably do 400. If I can see upside down, I want 400 grams. Maybe just get my spatula again. Ooh. Baking is a mess. I am yet to meet the person that bakes with everything being spigorously clean. Impossible. Oh, I'm already at 411. Okay, that's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to add my another tin, zero it off, get 411 grams into this tin. Oh, we're just about there. I know this may seem tedious to you, especially if you're just a home baker, but it's just so beautiful when you cut into that cake. Do the very same to this one. And all of my layers are the same size. It just makes me happy. And why would I do this if it doesn't make me happy? So, okay, we're going to add in, scraping the bowl off. These spatulas are so amazing. And I've come to a point where I have overdone the amount that I've put in, which is great because you can now see what I've done. Put this aside. So this tin, only has 300 in, but those ones 411. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero it again, because I need 50 mils each of this. Pour it into this tin to even out the amount. May seem like a lot of mud, but like I said, you can totally eyeball this. I'm just very particular with this. Okay, taking tablespoon to tablespoon. Gonna zero that out again once it's on. Okay, we took out of that one. Now this one. Oh, Yolandie. This one. Okay, perfect. Now I'm gonna add 50 mils of this one as well. Okay, now I know my cakes are more or less the same amount of batter inside. Let's see. There. Just gonna clean that off a bit. Alright. These three are going into my oven now, and I'm gonna bake them for 25 minutes. We're gonna do this. Make sure it's on 25. Okay. Before I open that oven, I wanna tap my tins. You'll see there's air bubbles on the top. Just tap them a few times to get those bubbles out. It will make the cake bake without those little bubbles inside. And I'm gonna drop these into my oven quickly, so the oven doesn't go down too much in heat. Close it up, making sure I start this, and in 25 minutes we'll see what that cake looks like. Our cakes are done baking and they look perfect. Now the reason I'm putting my finger on it is when they pop out, you know that they are baked. Now you can use a skewer or one of these cake testers. Just press it in the middle, and if it comes out and doesn't have wet crumbs on it, you know your cake is baked. That is perfect. And now we need to put them aside because they need to be cold, and some of you might want to use it only the next day or the day after. So you want to keep it moist and preserved almost for that. So I'm going to show you how. What I do, usually to help my baking time, I prep my cakes a day in advance. If I don't have the time to bake it the morning and decorate the afternoon, and I take cling wrap. Now, of course, you don't have to have a big one like I do. We're going to open this up and we're going to flip our cake. Now, these cakes have been standing for 5 minutes. Don't let it cool down completely in those tins. You don't want that. You want your cake not to bake any further. And here's the magic. Do you see it came out perfectly? We are going to take off that little baking paper, and we have a perfectly round cake with no cake pieces that left behind. And I'm just gonna cut this out, close it up, and do all 3 layers, and then drop it right into my freezer. Now, if you are going to use it only in a week's time or even a few weeks' time, you can still do this. I'll just recommend wrapping it 2 times and then in foil, and then it can live in your fridge for at least a month. But fresh cakes are always better. Oh, that is not enough. So I'm just want to make sure my cake is wrapped up well, because we want to, and not only do we don't want that air to come inside, we are doing this while the cake is still hot, because then it's almost steaming, and you want to keep that flavor and that moistness inside. It will help a lot. Tipping out the last one. Yeah. And gonna flip this off. There you go. my scissors back, close it up. Perfect. We have 3 layers, and I put them down with a rounded side on my little shelf here. I think this was an old baking rack or a rack for or a fridge or something. They work perfectly at the second-hand stores. Now this is going right into my freezer until it's cold, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to make the frosting.